Welcome back. If you've been following along, we've been trying to add analog gauges to our sim rig using SimHub. In the first video we worked out how to get the serial data out of SimHub, which gives us the telemetry of speed and tacho revs and things like that. And then in the next video on, we discovered some motors which were made specifically for dashboards we could use in our project so the needles spin round fast enough. In this video we're going to start building the gauge itself. So with the gauge, the world's pretty much our oyster, right? Because we've got the motor and we can put a needle on it and put any background on it we like. So you can make something like for an old Mustang or even the latest day Ferrari or something if they had analog gauges in them, not too sure. But I wanted to make a bit of a tribute to possibly one of the most iconic cars, certainly my generation, and copy the dash out of that, and that's the Ferrari F40. After doing a bit of research on this, I think it would have to be the closest you get to a purchasable kit car from a manufacturer, because it's just really just bits and bolted on, and especially when it comes down to the gauge cluster, which makes it perfect for this project because it's just so simple. So you can see here is it's basically this gauges you could probably get from local speed shop, right? Speedo, revs, boost pressure, water temperature. We've got some others down here, but we're not too really worried about those. We're just going to make this sort of layout here. So I really don't know the size of these gauges. I want to get it at least semi-accurate. I've looked over online and even found the user manual or the owner's guide for Ferrari 40. Of course, it's not going to have measurements in there, but I thought I might get some details. So anything I can really do is probably guess that these gauges here are 2 inches, which makes these tacho and speed gauges work out to be about 80 millimeters at the face. So these gauges don't fit flush up to the side here. It's got a bit of a housing it goes into, and we see it's offset slightly, so it's got a bigger gap at the top than it is down the bottom, and I guess this is so it faces the gauges more towards the driver, so you can see what's going on. Based on those rough estimates, this is the design I've come up with. So we can see it's got the sort of the beveled facing edge, and it's sort of like it does in the photo. It's got a short bit at the bottom and sort of puts the gauge on an angle. On the back here we'll have the motor, so if we decide this cover, the motor will sit here and drive the needle, and we'll have the face of our gauge right there. In the back cover around the edge here I'm going to have rows of near pixel LEDs, so I can pick the colour that I want inside here. When I've seen a photo of this lit up, it's sort of a weird green colour. So whether that's the white balance of the camera being used or what, I'm not entirely sure, but of course with near pixels we'll pick any colour we want in here. So to make this look as authentic as possible, I want the dials to look really good. I could go print these off on a laser printer or inkjet printer and stick them on, and it's good enough, right? But I want to make them look a bit more authentic than that. So what I've done is, although it's probably not the process I used, I've got a laser printer, laser engraver here, and some acrylic, and I'm going to spray paint one side of the acrylic. And if you don't know already, laser engravers or diode ones can't cut clear acrylic, but they can certainly destroy the paint. So I'm going to have painfully recreated these dials in Inkscape as SVGs, and then I'm just going to send this down to my engraver and just burn the numbers out, and then paint the backs with the red and the white paint to make them look a bit more authentic. I had a couple of stabs at the process, and it was a bit of a learning experience. I was rushing some of these ones and the paint cracked a bit because I was trying to dry it in a dehumidifier or a food dehydrator, and it's because it cracked, I assume because it just was drying too rapidly. And after a few attempts, actually I got it looking pretty good. And here's one of them here. So that's the rev one, and I'm just going to do obviously the speedo and the temperature and the boost pressure. So I'll fit in this housing, which is I've matched up. I'm hoping these are the right size, and then the motor goes on the back with the LED ring. I'll be releasing it short after this video of this all working. I've just got to program those LEDs so they're working. For the smaller gauges, there's a bit of a story. If you have a look at this picture, the smaller gauges, these are obviously for maybe perhaps for the States, because it's all not in Celsius, and it's got a weird boost pressure. I think it's pounds per inch. I'm not sure, I never heard of that, but I usually work in PSI. But you'll notice that the needles go a match, so all the needles go to the center of the turning point and move up and down. But for the metric ones, they're slightly different. So for the metric ones, we've got this sort of bar over here which blocks out the needle, and it just, to me, doesn't look as good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the bar pressure and the Celsius temperature with this numbering, but in the actual design of the American style gauges. And for the smaller gauges, this is kind of the design I've come up with. The motor, which won't be sitting there, it'll be sitting on the back, and it'll just clip together with the front and the back piece clipping on together, so it's a nice tidy little unit. Motor will come out the front there with the dial pointing to whatever value it needs to. Once you've got the gauges all up and done, it's just going to be a case of making these other little fiddly bits on here. Like we've got these oil pressure warning, temperature warning, I guess, and over here it's got a button which says slow down. When actually there's not a button, it's a light on either side. And of course this car is obviously a V8. This light turns on when one of the particular banks is overheating or has an error, I understand it. The dial down the bottom, this one I think resets the trip meter, which I won't be having in my gauges, and this one adjusts the brightness of the display, which I can easily alter with the neopixels. I can cut out this whole shape with my laser cutter on MDF wood, so it's going to be pretty easy once all the gauges are assembled and up and running. If you've made it this far, you should totally subscribe. We'll be going through a whole lot of videos setting up these gauges, and you can follow along and make them yourself. Definitely check out the link below for my website, jasonwinfield.nz, for all the code as we go along and the step by step to get these little motors up and running for our gauges. We don't just do sim stuff here, we do aliens and arcade machines and all sorts. So if that sort of thing interests you, you should definitely stick around. Thanks for watching.